Listen up, because Hollywood just had its quietest nightmare ripped into the light, and the industry doesn't know how to react. What was once whispered behind closed doors has now exploded. Hollywood has weathered scandals before. Secret affairs, sudden lawsuits, leaks that destroyed careers overnight. But what erupted after Tasha K's latest podcast is different. Heavier, darker, quieter, and far more unsettling. Because this time, the story isn't about betrayal or money. It's about trust shattered, silence weaponized, and a secret so potent that if even part of it is true, it changes everything we thought we knew. According to accounts discussed on the podcast, a report tied to Teyana Taylor was quietly buried, unseen by the public. Not denied, not addressed, simply ignored. And when something that sensitive remains hidden for years, questions start to fester. Listeners describe the episode as less gossip, more like a confession slipping out under unbearable pressure. No laughter, no dramatics, just a slow, nerve-wracking build, the kind that makes you feel like you're eavesdropping on something forbidden. The reaction online was immediate and intense. Clips began circulating within minutes. Screenshots flooded timelines. Comment sections exploded with shock, grief, and anger. Fans weren't debating opinions or preferences. They were trying to process how something so serious could remain secret in an industry built on exposure. And then it got darker. People started realizing this. In this part of the episode, Tasha K recounted an alleged incident involving police presence, outside parties, and a situation that reportedly spun completely out of control. She presented it as a snapshot of the unstable environment surrounding Teyana's personal life at the time. Chaos, secrecy, and emotional fallout were intertwined, creating a reality where nothing felt secure, honest, or anchored. Her delivery was calm, deliberate, almost weary. Not sensational, but heavy with inevitability. By the end of that segment, listeners weren't debating minor details. They were grappling with ethics. If these claims were false, why had nobody shut them down immediately? If they were exaggerated, why the silence? And if even a fragment of it was true, why did it take a podcast to surface the conversation? That question now hovers over Hollywood, not about guilt or innocence, but about silence, because silence, in moments like this, echoes louder than any denial ever could. And insiders suggest this is only the first layer. What comes next may be far more impossible to ignore. By the time the episode reached its midpoint, a chilling truth became clear. This wasn't merely about what was allegedly hidden. It was about the way everything around it had unfolded. Secrets don't exist in a vacuum. They travel through people. They leave marks. They alter behavior. As the discussion progressed, the focus shifted from documents and whispers to something even more revealing: patterns. Patterns in how people attached, withdrew, and responded under pressure. Tasha K didn't accuse. She didn't diagnose. She observed, and careful observation can be far more unsettling than any outright allegation. According to her analysis, the dynamic between Teyana and those closest to her during this period appeared rushed, intense, and unstable. Not the kind of chaotic romance you see on screen, but the raw, jagged kind that forms when someone is still healing from deep emotional wounds. Listeners noticed her precision with language. She didn't label anything as wrong. She didn't call it evil. She said it was forced. And that word hung in the air. Forced situations don't simply happen. They're constructed when people are trying to fill voids too quickly. Fans online began revisiting old interviews, body language, and timelines. Moments that once seemed tender now read as frantic, overcompensated, or performative. After trauma, people aren't always chasing love. They're running from pain. That's when Tasha K peeled back the layers, dissecting the emotional mechanics beneath it all. In this segment, Tasha K painted the relationship as forced rather than natural, a connection built on timing instead of genuine feeling. She suggested it align more with emotional rebound than true intimacy. According to her analysis, one of the individuals was highly visible, admired, and in the public eye, making the attachment convenient, not stable. Her delivery was clinical, precise, not judgmental, not cruel. She wasn't asking who was at fault. She was asking why now. That question reverberated across social media. Why that exact moment? Why that intensity? Why such a rapid pace? And above all, why the silence that followed? As the episode progressed, Tasha K highlighted a stark imbalance in emotional needs. One side, she explained, appeared increasingly needy, craving reassurance, closeness, constant validation. The other side was distant, unavailable, stretched thin by career demands, travel, and personal responsibilities. She implied that this mismatch was unsustainable. When one person seeks grounding and the other seeks escape, abandonment becomes inevitable. Listeners described this part of the episode less as gossip and more like a psychological unraveling. The pacing slowed, the words sharpened, and the story shifted from sensational to tragic. Social media mirrored that change. The laughter, the emojis, the jokes disappeared. In their place were broken hearts, question marks, long paragraphs of disbelief and sadness. Fans mourned the possibility that trauma had been ignored or masked rather than confronted. Others questioned whether fame and influence had shielded people from accountability, turning emotional chaos into a polished spectacle. Tasha K went further, exploring absence not as distance of the body, but absence of presence. She described a scenario where one person's ambition, schedule, and lifestyle left little space for emotional care, while the other increasingly depended on intimacy for security. That imbalance, she suggested, generated pressure, and pressure, when left unchecked, breeds secrecy. At this stage of the episode, Tasha K highlighted the stark contrast between a fast-paced, demanding lifestyle and a partner who allegedly needed constant emotional reassurance. She suggested this mismatch may have fueled choices that favored avoidance over honesty. Her words weren't accusatory, they carried gravity. The implication was clear. When people are too consumed to face emotional fallout, they often choose silence instead. That silence, whether deliberate or circumstantial, is what critics online can't stop dissecting because silence has consequences. Fans began questioning responsibility, not guilt. If someone is emotionally overwhelmed, does that excuse withholding information that affects others? If survival is the priority, does that justify secrecy? There are no easy answers, but even raising the questions reshaped public perception. What once looked like confidence now reads as detachment. What once appeared as independence now feels like distance. And distance, under scrutiny, starts to feel deliberate. As the episode edged toward its later moments, Tasha K pulled back emotionally, yet not narratively. She didn't dramatize. She didn't overstate. She let the implications breathe. She reminded listeners that rebound relationships often serve a purpose: to distract, to soothe, to move forward without reflection. But when rebounds intersect with serious, unspoken realities, the damage compounds. According to her framing, this wasn't about villains. It was about avoidance. Avoiding grief. Avoiding accountability. Avoiding conversations that could alter everything. Online, the discourse grew heavier. Some fans defended Teyana, insisting privacy should remain sacred, no matter the level of fame. Others argued that when multiple lives are entangled, silence is no longer personal, it becomes ethical. That tension, privacy versus responsibility, now sits at the heart of this controversy. No matter the truth, one fact is undeniable. The public is no longer looking away. What began as whispers has morphed into scrutiny. What started as speculation has turned into analysis. And as Tasha K hinted, the emotional imbalance she described may only scratch the surface. Because when people rush, cling, or detach, and disappear, it's rarely random. It's almost always reaction. And reactions leave traces. Evidence lingers, waiting to be uncovered. What that evidence reveals next may be even harder to face. By the later stages of the podcast, the focus sharply shifted away from raw emotion and into strategy. When relationships start to feel rehearsed, when connections seem convenient, and when silence perfectly shields image, people stop asking what happened and start asking why it was allowed to happen this way. According to listener reactions, this was the moment everything ceased to feel accidental. Tasha K didn't frame what followed as romance, heartbreak, or even betrayal. She framed it as utility, a relationship built not on love or longevity, but on timing, optics, and distraction. That revelation shifted everything. Fans began rewatching public appearances with a new lens. Red carpets, interviews, photo ops once viewed as natural now appeared staged. Smiles that once read as chemistry now seemed calculated. The question wasn't whether they cared for each other, it was whether the relationship itself had a purpose. And that purpose, according to speculation, may have been to redirect attention. When personal chaos hits a breaking point, a carefully curated narrative can act as a shield. Tasha K went further, exploring not just emotional imbalance, but power imbalance. One partner thriving in independence, motion, and control. The other shrinking into dependency, craving validation and need. That dynamic, she suggested, doesn't just strain relationships, it exposes them. She described a pattern that felt almost unsettlingly intimate. One partner growing increasingly dependent, almost childlike in the craving for reassurance, while the other lacked the time or space to respond. Her analysis suggested the dynamic resembled caretaking more than partnership, a scenario that often leads to quiet withdrawal rather than confrontation. Her tone was not mocking. It was clinical, analytical, precise. Dependence, she explained, doesn't just drain a relationship, it reveals vulnerabilities people fight desperately to hide. Listeners say this was the point where the story ceased feeling like gossip and began feeling like damage control in real time. If one side was overwhelmed and the other unavailable, the easiest path wasn't honesty. It was distance. And distance is far simpler to manage when a narrative has already been constructed. As the episode progressed, Tasha K introduced a theory that immediately set the internet alight. The relationship may have served a mutually beneficial public function. Not love as commitment, but love became a cover. Tasha K suggested that both parties gained from the arrangement simply by being seen together. Visibility, credibility, distraction. And in Hollywood, distraction isn't just useful, it's currency. Online reactions were immediate. Some fans called the idea cynical, dismissing it outright. Others admitted it made too much sense to ignore. When timing aligns perfectly, when one person needs silence while the other craves validation, coincidence begins to feel impossible. The conversation quickly expanded beyond the two individuals. Fans began questioning the ecosystem surrounding them. Managers, PR teams, industry insiders, people whose job isn't to protect the truth, but to protect the brand. Because when brands are threatened, narratives are shaped, edited, and rewritten. As tension mounted, Tasha K stressed that this wasn't about accusing anyone of intentional harm. It was about how Hollywood contains fallout, how scandals are softened, how